The autumn wind moved gently through the crowded streets carrying the scent of roasted chestnuts, gasoline, and distant hope. Cars rushed past glowing skyscrapers, people hurried home after long shifts, and street musicians filled the air with melodies that blended into the heartbeat of the city. On a quiet corner near the train station, under a flickering yellow streetlight, stood a 19-year-old boy with a worn-out guitar and a voice that didn't belong to the noise around him. His name was Daniel Harper. Most people didn't know his name. To them, he was just another street singer trying to make a few dollars. But Daniel wasn't just singing for money. He was singing to survive. Daniel grew up in a small town outside Chicago. His father had once been a factory worker, and his mother worked double shifts at a diner. Life had never been easy, but it had been warm. There was always laughter at the dinner table, even when there wasn't much food on it. Everything changed the winter Daniel turned 14. The factory shut down. His father lost his job. Bills piled up like silent enemies. The house that once felt safe began to feel smaller, tighter, heavier. Arguments replaced laughter. Silence replaced music. But in the middle of that darkness, Daniel discovered something that would change his life forever. An old guitar. It had belonged to his grandfather. The strings were rusty, and the wood was scratched, but when Daniel touched it, something inside him woke up. He didn't know chords. He didn't know technique. But he knew emotion. The first song he ever tried to sing was. His voice cracked. His fingers fumbled. But his mother stood in the doorway with tears in her eyes. "Daniel," she whispered, "you have something special." That night, for the first time in months, the house felt warm again. By the time Daniel turned 17, singing had become his escape. While other teenagers were at parties or football games, he was in his room, practicing songs by hand, trying to understand how they poured pain into melody. But life wasn't a movie. Dreams didn't pay bills. After graduating high school, Daniel skipped college. His father was working part-time construction jobs, and his mother's health had begun to decline. Money was tight. Every dollar mattered. So Daniel made a decision. He would sing on the streets of Chicago. At first, it was terrifying. His hands shook the first time he opened his guitar case on the sidewalk. People walked past without looking. Some rolled their eyes. Some laughed. But then something unexpected happened. A little girl stopped. She tugged her mother's hand and whispered, "Mommy, he sounds like the radio." Daniel smiled and kept singing. By the end of that night, there were $27 in his guitar case. It wasn't much, but it was hope. Weeks turned into months. Daniel became a familiar face near the train station. Office workers recognized him. Taxi drivers honked in rhythm. A coffee shop owner sometimes handed him a free cup on cold mornings. But the road wasn't easy. Winter in Chicago was brutal. His fingers would go numb from the cold. Snow would soak his shoes. Some nights, he went home with only $5. Other nights, nothing at all. Still, he sang. Because when he sang, he wasn't poor. He wasn't struggling. He was free. One freezing December evening, as Christmas lights sparkled across the city, Daniel sang an original song he had written for his mother. It was called, "Hold On to the Light." His voice trembled with emotion. The lyrics spoke of broken factories, tired hands, and a son who promised to make things better. A small crowd gathered. Among them stood a woman in her early 30s, wearing a long black coat. She wasn't clapping. She wasn't filming. She was listening. Her name was Rebecca Collins. Rebecca was a music producer visiting Chicago from. She had worked with independent artists and was always searching for something real. And Daniel was real. After he finished singing, Rebecca approached him. "Is that your song?" she asked. Daniel nodded nervously. "Yes, ma'am, it's beautiful," she said. "Have you ever recorded?" He shook his head. She handed him a business card. "I think you're ready." Daniel stared at the card for hours that night. It felt too good to be true. What if it was fake? What if he wasn't good enough? His father was skeptical. "Los Angeles," he said. "That's for stars, not street singers." But his mother held Daniel's hands gently. "You've been singing for everyone else," she said. "Now sing for yourself." 2 weeks later, Daniel boarded a bus to Los Angeles with one suitcase, his grandfather's guitar, and a heart full of fear. Los Angeles was overwhelming. Palm trees, traffic, billboards of celebrities, auditions on every corner. It felt like everyone was chasing the same dream. Rebecca introduced Daniel to a small recording studio. The first time he put on headphones and stood in front of a professional microphone, his throat went dry. "What if I mess up?" he whispered. Rebecca smiled. Then we record again. When Daniel began singing, "Hold On to the Light," something magical happened. He forgot about the microphone. He forgot about Los Angeles. He remembered his mother. He remembered the cold Chicago nights. And he sang like his life depended on it. When he finished, there was silence in the studio. Then applause. Not loud, not dramatic, but real. Rebecca uploaded the song online. At first, it received a few hundred views. Then a few thousand. Then something unexpected happened. A popular TikTok creator used the song in a video about struggling families. Overnight, "Hold On to the Light" exploded. Within a week, it reached 1 million streams. Daniel woke up to thousands of notifications. Messages from strangers saying his song made them cry. Comments from people sharing their own stories of hardship. One message stood out. It was from his father. "Son," it read, "I heard your song on the radio today." Daniel broke down in tears. Soon, record labels began calling. Interviews were scheduled. Daniel was invited to perform on a local TV show in Los Angeles. The night before the show, fear crept in again. What if I'm just a street singer? He thought. What if this is all luck? Rebecca looked at him seriously. "Daniel, talent opens the door. But heart keeps it open. And you have both." The stage lights were blinding. The audience was larger than any crowd he had ever seen. For a moment, he missed the quiet corner in Chicago. He missed the simple streetlight and passing trains. But then he closed his eyes. And he sang. His voice carried pain, hope, love, and resilience. The final note echoed through the studio like a promise. The audience stood, a standing ovation. Daniel Harper was no longer invisible. Months later, Daniel released his first album. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't overproduced. It was honest. The album climbed charts slowly but steadily. Music critics praised his authenticity. Fans connected with his lyrics. He wasn't the biggest star in America. But he was real. And that mattered. The most important moment of his journey didn't happen at an awards show. It happened back in Chicago. Daniel returned to the same train station corner where he had once stood alone. But this time, he wasn't alone. A small stage had been set up. Local musicians gathered. Families came with blankets and coffee cups. Daniel stepped up to the microphone, holding his grandfather's guitar. "My journey started right here," he said. "This city believed in me before the world did." In the front row sat his parents. His father's hands were rough from years of labor. His mother looked healthier, stronger. Daniel began singing, "Hold On to the Light." But this time, the crowd sang with him. The cold street that once felt lonely now felt like home. Fame changed Daniel's life, but it didn't change his heart. He started a foundation to support young street musicians across the United States. He visited schools in underprivileged neighborhoods. He reminded kids that talent doesn't need permission to exist. Reporters often asked him, "What was your big break?" He would smile and say, "It wasn't Los Angeles. It wasn't the viral video. It was the first time someone stopped to listen." Years later, Daniel stood backstage at a major music awards show. His name was announced as a nominee for Best New Artist. He didn't win, but he didn't care, because as he walked off stage, his phone buzzed with a video message. It was a teenage boy singing on a street corner in Chicago. He was covering "Hold On to the Light," and a small crowd was gathering around him. Daniel smiled. The light had been passed on. The journey from street singer to national artist wasn't easy. It was filled with rejection, doubt, freezing nights, and uncertain mornings. But Daniel's story wasn't just about music. It was about resilience. It was about believing in your voice even when the world walks past you. It was about holding on, even when your hands are numb from the cold. In a world full of noise, Daniel Harper proved that sometimes, all it takes is one honest song to change everything. And somewhere tonight, under a flickering streetlight in America, another dreamer is singing. Waiting for someone to stop. Waiting for someone to listen. Waiting for their light to shine.